Greetings, delegates. My name is Lachlan Swanson, and I'm the USGO for MMUN 61. This video is to address new delegate training. Over the course of the next few minutes, I'll be going over some of what you can expect over the course of the conference, and especially in the first couple of sessions. Conference can be a little intimidating your first time, but if you keep in mind some of the structure of the conference and pace yourselves, I'm sure you'll have a great time discussing international issues with your peers and identifying solutions and paths forward for the international community. I'll start by going over the conference schedule. As you can see here, we'll be running from early evening Thursday to mid-afternoon Saturday, so make sure you're available throughout the conference. We've aimed to keep the number of committee hours as close as possible to conventional years, but also have tried to leave plenty of breaks for you to decompress after a couple hours at your screen. Make sure to take care of yourselves through the course of the conference. Virtual conference may not be as physically exhausting, but may very well be even more mentally taxing. MMUN is fundamentally what we call a teaching conference. This means that our primary objectives embrace learning and demonstration of knowledge, as opposed to conflict and competition. By no means does this mean that you shouldn't try your best. We have awards for a reason. However, the best way to get those awards is often through demonstrating mastery of concepts, as opposed to grandstanding. The United Nations itself is about collaboration, after all. It is in very few countries' positions to make themselves the center of attention, and even then, that applies less to the diplomats and more to the heads of state. We aim for delegates to walk away with a better understanding of a number of things, including but not limited to negotiating technique, policy comprehension, writing quality, and public speaking. These skills form the core of our learning objectives because of how universally they can be applied. Skills that delegates learn at MMUN are often skills they'll use for their entire professional careers. To build on the idea of MMUN being a learning conference, I'm going to say it with emphasis: ask questions. The best way for you to learn at conference is to think critically about what is happening, what your positions are, and what the different tools that are available to you do, and so on. This requires that you ask questions. Whether you're asking those questions of more experienced delegates, of your dais staff, of your professors and faculty advisors, the best outcomes happen for students who are active members of the process. In addition, asking questions is an easy way to demonstrate that you're at least paying some kind of attention. This could be important for a number of reasons. Perhaps you're taking Model UN as a class and your professor needs to see engagement to give you a good grade. Maybe another delegate or group will connect your questions to their ideas, allowing you to better participate. Or maybe you just need a way to make the dais know who you are. Whatever the purpose of asking the question, you won't succeed without your own inquiries throughout the conference. I alluded to awards before. While we are a teaching conference, we do want to recognize students who participate in the process effectively and are knowledgeable contributors to their committees. As such, I'd like to underscore here some of the things that we look for. If you were paying attention, you'll note that most of the things on this slide that we look for as awards as concepts are concepts that we also look to be teaching. In other words, those who understand the biggest components of what we want you to learn and demonstrate that understanding in conference will be the most successful in awards. That being said, we do know that delegates will have different strengths and weaknesses when it comes to these concepts. This is a big part of why diplomatic skills are so crucial. Leaning on other delegates to make up for your own weaknesses and using your strengths to advance the agendas of both your country and your allies will give better results, both in the real world and in Model UN. Giving shoutouts to other delegates, acknowledging their successes, shows that you are paying attention to the skills that we want you to be learning and to the people that you're working with. For your first session, you'll notice that the layout will look a lot like this, and the first session will set the tone for much of the rest of the conference. When you arrive in your assigned virtual room, you'll notice some things about the layout. The room will have several blocks of color like you see here, and likely many other little dots moving around or big dots sitting in place. The blocks of color are, for the most part, simply ways to easily organize the room so you can communicate with other delegates about where to meet. Yellow, or blue, or pink, for example. The larger dots are huddles, groups of other delegates who are already in a group together and conversing or discussing topics. The exception to the large blocks is the block that should be at the top of the room, which should have some indication that it is the dais. This is where the chair, legal, and rapporteur will be during the formal session, and where you will always be able to find someone during informal. If you ever have a question about process or the conference, don't hesitate to head up to the dais and ask a question by getting the attention of one of the staff members. Alternatively, you can send us a message using the built-in chat function, and we'll get back to you as soon as we notice it. In the bottom left of each floor, you'll see the elevators button. If you drag your dot over to the elevators, you'll be able to move to other floors, including, importantly, the feedback rooms. In the bottom right is the exit. This will close Gatherly, so try to avoid it unless you're done for the day. I mentioned a moment ago formal and informal session. These describe the two primary modes of discussion we'll engage in at MMUN 61. Formal session most resembles the normal functions of the UN that you may have seen in video or news coverage. Individual delegates taking turns giving speeches, presided over by the committee chair and arranged, for lack of a better term, formally. Formal session presents your opportunity to describe your positions to the entire room, to indicate your priorities for action, and to express appreciation of the work that you've done and the work still to be completed. Speech length is determined by the body, but typically limited to approximately 1 or 2 minutes per speech. This is also where some of our parliamentary procedure rules will come into play. Those rules will be covered in another video by our presidents. For now, I'll move on to discussing some about informal session. Informal session, or caucusing, or any number of other ways to refer to it, is where the real meat and potatoes of the work of the body is conducted. While formal session allows for strong broadcasting of perspectives and goals, informal session is where delegates get together to write the actual documents that each committee will eventually vote on. Typically, your very first informal session is used to get an idea for which topic is most important to your room, and to try and discuss with other delegates which topic is most important to you. After that first informal session, you'll hopefully adopt a topic during the next formal session, and then return to informal after just a couple more speeches. During this second informal session, you'll want to find a group of delegates who want to talk about the topic in the same way that you do. This may be due to similar geographical conditions, aligned economic goals, or any number of other reasons. Either way, sorting yourself into a like-minded group provides the best opportunity to get your top priorities heard. One of the best ways that you can identify those groups is by paying close attention to the speeches that are given during formal sessions, where the other delegates will be, as I said, broadcasting and indicating what their priorities are. The major element of the informal process, after identifying what your priorities are, will involve writing. You'll negotiate with the other members of your caucus to find the best ways to word things, the most effective ways of communicating priorities and objectives. Don't get too caught up in writing, though, or you might miss out on the discussion happening around you. Later in the process, it may be necessary to merge your resolution with another to get more delegates on board. This process can be a little confusing, but pay attention to what more experienced delegates and your chair are signaling, and you'll learn a lot about how to get what you need while still accommodating others and achieving mutually beneficial agreements. You can even try asking the dais for pointers in the process or suggestions about similar groups that you could talk to. When all the writing is finally done at the end and you're ready to get the final word on your work, you'll move to close debate and enter voting procedure. Be careful not to enter voting procedure before another group has their work ready, or you'll give other delegates a really good reason to oppose your resolution. When voting, there are a couple motions you can do, so keep them in mind. You'll want to pay attention closely to the president's presentation on this so that you know what those different motions are. There's a couple of different kinds of vote that will be covered more in depth, but you should keep in mind that the core ones are either adopting by consensus, a placard vote, or a roll call vote. We'll be trying to avoid roll call vote at all at MMUN 61 because of the limitations of the Gatherly engine. However, when necessary, you can discuss with your dais about whether you think it's really necessary. When voting procedure concludes, your committee will move back into its default state of open debate. During this time, you'll again be unable to make speeches on substantive matters and should move to consider the second topic as quickly as possible. That concludes this video. Thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing all of you at Midwest Model UN 61.